Today we continue our NHL offseason plan series. We're now on to team number 19 from the NHL's regular season. That's the Winnipeg Jets. So we're going to take a look at what their season was like, what to expect from them this offseason. They could be a team that's very busy and very interesting to watch. We'll discuss the Jets coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series, and we're exploring the Winnipeg Jets, which in my opinion could be one of the more interesting teams to keep an eye on here as the offseason slowly gets into full swing. So first up, we're going to recap the 21-22 season, take a look at their cap space situation moving at the end of the season, moving into the summer, and then we're also going to look at their expiring contracts and what they need to take care of in way of business in that sense, RFAs, UFAs, and then look at the top burning questions facing this franchise. So let's get started with a 21-22 season recap. So, of course, we know the Winnipeg Jets unfortunately missed the playoffs. They didn't miss by too much, but sometimes it's like, you're close, but it's still a big gap to close that little bit to get in. I mean, they were in the running right up until the last couple of weeks of the season, and things just got too far behind. They finished with a record of 39, 32, and 11 for 89 points. Looking at some team stats, they scored 250 goals. That's 16th best, so we're in the middle of the league, which is decent. Goals against are 253 for 20th best. They can certainly do a little bit better than that. Not the worst by any means, but certainly not a playoff kind of team. Obviously puts them into a minus for the year. They need to be a little bit better defensively. That's fair to say. The power play was 17th best in the league, 21.1%, which is respectable, but not an elite level. The PK, it was one of the worst, 75% for 29th best. So clearly, defense was a problem this year. Hellebuck obviously sometimes seems to be one extreme to the other. Sometimes he's more of a Vezina nominee kind of goalie. Other times he's a little bit more ordinary. And that, to a degree, is relatable to the team in front of him. I think it's definitely fair to say that. This team went through some changes through the year. They saw longtime head coach Paul Maurice abruptly resign. Obviously, it took its toll on him with all the restrictions and COVID and all that stuff. He's just ready for a break, essentially. They did make some trades. They traded away Andrew Kopp, Nathan Beaulieu. They reacquired Mason Appleton after he went in the expansion draft last summer to Seattle. Picked up Zach Sanford. And overall, when they traded Kopp, they picked up Sanford, who they know was likely not as good of a player, but trying to get somebody in there who's got NHL experience as they were still trying to push for the playoffs. They traded Kopp more so because of their concern on their ability to re-sign him in free agency this coming offseason. So let's now jump over and look at their cap space situation. They finished the 21-22 season pretty darn tight with only $119,000 in available space. Can't do much with that. Going into the offseason when 22-23 is officially kicking in here, they had 13 contracts on the books for next year, totaling just shy of $64.5 million, which gives them around $18 million in change available for new deals. Of course, that's 13 contracts, so $18 million can get eaten up pretty quick when you're looking at signing 9 to 10 players to go along with that. So who are those players that need new contracts? Well, let's take a look at that next year. So let's take a look first at their list of restricted free agents, which is certainly topped by Pierre-Luc Dubois, by far the most important RFA that they need to figure out here. So that's going to be a big, interesting topic. You got Mason Appleton, who I mentioned, reacquired from Seattle. And leading into the expansion draft, he was starting to develop and become a real decent player for them. So I think they'll get him signed and stick him around here for a little longer. They have Evgeny Svechnikov, who needs a new deal, Jansen Harkins, Christian Vesalainen, and David Gustafsson. On the UFA side of things, we've got Paul Stastny. I'm not sure what the future holds for Stastny, but certainly, an interesting player who could be re-signed, but I don't know where things stand between the team and him. You got Zach Sanford, who acquired from Ottawa later in the season, along with Adam Brooks and Eric Comrie, who are both Group 6 free agents, which means they did not get enough NHL games played by the time they're hitting their UFA eligibility by age, which means they're automatically become UFAs instead of RFAs. Of course, Brooks is a player who bounced around on waivers. Not sure that he's going to be signed. Eric Comrie, though, I think they would be interested, but now, of course, he's gone back and forth a lot. At one point, they lost him through waivers before. I'm not sure what the future holds for Comrie, but I would think that the Jets will attempt to get a contract for him before free agency gets underway. Now, what are the top burning questions facing the Jets going into this offseason? Well, first and foremost, to me, one of the top things is the future of top center Mark Scheifele. Of course, Scheifele is a player who's going to scrutinized pretty heavily throughout the year and at the end of the year as well. We know Mark Scheifele's had made some comments himself that he had to have some tough conversations with general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff about the future of the team and wanted to know the direction and all that. There was some talk before, even into a few months before the season was over, that he didn't officially say, I want a trade, but it was kind of known that he would welcome it and appreciate a fresh start somewhere else. He's getting into the latter part of his 20, almost 30 years old. A couple of years left on his contract at a reasonable amount for what he produces. Typically around a point per game player. And he hasn't won much of anything as of this point in his career. So obviously he wants to be in a more competitive situation, which is his concern, which I understand. But there's also some talk and some concerns that the Jets might have some locker room issues and some issues with some big personalities. And Scheifele might be at the forefront of that. And we could also maybe include, this is only speculation on my part, Captain Blake Wheeler. I mean, we know that Patrick Laine it kind of felt like he was run out of town and didn't mesh well with those guys. Really, ever since Dustin Byfuglien left. I mean, Dustin Byfuglien was more of a leader than most players that they've had there. It just seems like things have changed a bit. I don't know. I'm not going to say that Wheeler and Scheifele are the problem, but based on a lot of the things that you hear, you got to think some of it could be true. That it's an issue there, and that maybe a little bit of a culture change might be in order. Darren Dreger himself, who's a very well-connected national NHL insider, said he does not see a lineup for the Winnipeg Jets next year that features number 55 Mark Scheifele in it. So to me, he's pretty convinced there's going to be a trade, even though Scheifele hasn't explicitly asked for it, that the Jets probably feel like it is best for the team and for him. So if he's gone, they should get a good return, but they're going to need another center iceman. Don't know if that's going to come via trade or how that's going to come to be. So that's the center position for them. Big question marks. Pierre-Luc Dubois, another big question mark. Can they get him signed long term? I know Elliot Friedman was reporting earlier in the season that was a top priority for the Jets, but there was some, a belief that if they have difficulties on contract negotiations or that he does not want to sign a long-term deal, they might consider trading him too. So obviously at this point, we don't know who is going to be there next year, and could PLD and Scheifele both be moved? I wouldn't think so, especially if they trade Scheifele. They really need to keep Dubois. I think he was obviously a little younger and can be the same kind of player, like produce at the same level. I think he can. So I don't know how that's going to go, but signing him to a long-term contract to solidify him as being a big part of your team, to me, makes a ton of sense. Hopefully they can get that worked out. Another big question now is, who is your head coach? Could it be Barry Trotz? We know that the Jets have spoken to Barry Trotz. Of course, Dave Lowry took over as interim head coach after Maurice resigned, but he's not going to be the head coach. I guess he is welcome to apply, is the way that Cheveldayoff put it in context here, but it believed he won't be. They're going to have a new staff next year. Barry Trotz is from the province of Manitoba. We know that they've already spoken, but Trotz is going to have other options. There's as many as 5 or 6 teams looking to speak to the suddenly found free agent coach here that's available, which a lot of teams probably weren't expecting. And we'll see. I mean, it makes a ton of sense for Trotz to go there. I just don't know that it's going to happen because he's going to have other options, and other teams might throw more money at him. I don't know what's most important to him. Does he want to go home? Is it more about money? Is it a bit about both? I don't know. I mean, we know that there's going to be at least, like I said, 4, 5, 6 other teams talking to Barry Trotz. If he's not the head coach, who could it be? There's a lot of question marks around that as well. We haven't heard word of anybody else. To me, the Jets are probably going to, they'll probably still talk to people, but they're probably going to, I'm sure that they've left it as it's your job if you want it. And at this point, it'd be more about making an offer. That's what would be my suspicion, but we'll see. Certainly their blue line could use some more changes, I think, again. They brought in Nate Schmidt, they brought in Brendan Dillon, and the blue line to me is still not good enough. So I'm not sure exactly what happens. Neil Pionk didn't have a good year either. And Josh Morrissey is a good defenseman. I don't know that he's really a bona fide number one, no. And getting a number one defenseman, unless you draft him, is really difficult. So I'm not sure that the Jets are going to be able to pull that off. I don't think there's anything in free agency that's really would scream number one defenseman in that sense. I guess John Klingberg's probably the closest thing to it. I mean, he is capable of logging big minutes. I don't know if he'd have desire to go to Winnipeg. He's going to have lots of options too, and that's going to come at a big price tag, which is going to be difficult for them to afford. So I don't know if they can really do that anyhow. Maybe if they do trade Scheifele, they'll get another top D-man back. But to me, you need a right shot D to really work with Morrissey to make that D core a little bit better. So that's something they certainly need to look at. The defense is a big part of what used to be their big strength, and now it's not as good as it used to be, which is a big part of why the team isn't as good as it used to be. It's just that simple. And of course, they also have the 2022 draft coming up, where they're picking at number 14. You have to think that pick might be in play. They do have a few good prospects, and they could use a few more. Will they see Cole Perfetti jump into a full-time role next year, the bigger impact? Will Ches Lucius get a spot? He didn't sign his contract, so he's now out of college hockey into the pro ranks, but will he be needing some time in the AHL first? I don't know. So they do have some interesting young players, and could they use another one? Sure, but they could also maybe get an impact player that is going to be more quickly helping them. So if a team is willing to part with, a fairly young top six kind of forward, then maybe that pick becomes tradable. I mean, I think it's all the teams from 10 to 20, I think, are probably going to explore that, and this depends on what's there. At least that's my take on that. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, they can probably get a decent player, but I think this draft with these players, you're looking at least 2, maybe 3 years away for many of these players to have an impact. If you're not picking in the top 2 or 3 spots, you're waiting a while. For these players to have a chance to develop. I think there's only going to be a handful. There's only 1 or 2 probably go to the NHL right away, and then the year after we might get a few more, and then the rest will kind of follow depending on how things go. But that's debatable situation. If they can get an impact player, I think they have to look at that and see what they can do, and a lot of it's going to depend on other trades they make. If they do trade Scheifele, what do they get back? Maybe they get a good enough haul that they can fill some other holes. I'm not sure. So they have to explore all that. But certainly, like I said, they got to get a head coach. They might be trading their top franchise center. You got to sign the other great center, Dubois, long term if they can. Shuffle up the D. There's a lot of things going on. Cheveldayoff is going to have his hands full. No shortage of intrigue to see what this team does. And I think to a degree, depending on who they get for a coach, might also determine the direction of the team a little bit. And then might determine if they go a little bit closer. I don't think they're going to rebuild, but maybe a step back instead of a quick retool, trying to take a step forward. So we'll see how things go. Very intriguing team, in my opinion, to watch this offseason. So let me know your thoughts on the Jets down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.